This meeting is being conducted electronically pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.263-2 and MCL 15.263A1B. So our first item of agenda is, Jamie, will you do a roll call, please? And everyone, please announce from where they're calling.
Certainly. Thanks for that reminder. We're going to start out with Chair Colwick.
Present from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Director Fuller.
Present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Director Glasser.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Director Leto.
Here, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Director McNellis. We'll see if he joins again. I thought I saw him earlier on the screen. Director Martin.
Here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And Director Sylvester.
Present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we may have an absent Director McNallis. If so, do I have a motion to excuse these absent members?
So
A
moved.
motion.
Okay, by Alan, support from, was that Kyle?
Yep.
Okay, great. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. And, oh, there's Paul McNallis. Do you want to roll call him in or?
We'll record in the minutes that Director McNellis joined us at 4:02.
Great.
Welcome.
Okay, next up is the adoption of the formal agenda. Are there any changes the directors would like to see? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Okay,
Support.
Leto with support by Glasser. Great. All in favor say yes.
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 Okay,
Yes.
and any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. And next up is approval of the minutes from September 28th, 2021. Can I entertain a motion? I'm so sorry. Motion. Sorry.
Move
Are there
to-
any changes that directors would like to see from the past meeting minutes?
Nope. I move to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Bobby. Support
Second.
by Aaron Fuller. Great. Any opposed? Okay, great. Sorry, I am so distracted by this puppy. Did I get everything we needed there, Jamie, for that?
You're in great shape.
Okay. Great. So next up, we have general citizen comments from John, perhaps.
Yes, right now there's no general citizens comments.
Great. Thanks, Don.
Yep.
Any comments from the board directors before we get on to new business? Okay, great. So next on the agenda is new business. We have one item to discuss today. That is the approval of the Natural Features Protection Site Plan for a demolition project at 3921 Oakland Drive. And Jamie?
Yep, I can start with, and we have a staff presentation, I guess. We're going to ask the developers team to kind of walk through the demolition plans there at the site. And then we'll eventually flip over to page 9 in your agenda packet. We have the NFP site plan review evaluation form, and we'll kind of go stepwise through the different natural features and talk a little bit about how those are being addressed in this plan. So just to get us started, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tim Stewart, who can talk a bit about the phasing of this project. And then we'll have the team again walk through that demolition plan. Those sheets are included in your agenda packet as well. If anyone wants to share a screen, you should have the ability to do that too.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie. Like she said, I'm Tim Stewart. I'm with Hurley and Stewart Engineers. I'm here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So appreciate everyone's time today. Joining me as part of our development team, we have Lee Hayden from Chambers USA Architects. And we have Lori Davis from Hurley and Stewart. We have Noah Schneider from CSM. And I think that's all for our team. I'm not missing anybody, am I? No. So Jamie, I do have the drawings up. Would it make sense to share those? Or I don't know how detailed you want us to get into what we're presenting.
Visual is a good idea, if you don't mind sharing.
Okay, let me just share them real quick, and I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we have planned, and then also I'll ask Noah to maybe jump in and talk a little bit more specifically about what's planned for the demolition of the lakeside property, and maybe a little bit on the timing for that as well. So again, what we're here to talk about today is the lakeside property at 3921 Oakland Drive. And you should be able to see on my screen right now the title sheet from the plan set that we submitted. So this is approximately 49 or so acre piece of property there along Oakland Drive, a nice, beautiful piece of property. And I'll also scroll down to the topographic survey. And as many of you have seen, I'm sure, been out there before and maybe even recently, there's quite a few school buildings that are vacant now. And then a fair amount of other infrastructure that's been built up over the years, parking lots and sidewalks and things like that. And the plan here is to demolish all of that and then develop this into a new Kalamazoo Country Club golf facility and clubhouse and parking ramp and a bunch of other proposed parts of the project that we'll be bringing to you here in the next couple months. We're busy working away on the schematic design, so early stages of the development. But today, the first step really is to seek approval of the demolition of what's been built out there previously. So I'm just going to scroll down here. Feel free to stop me if anybody wants to focus on anything specific, but I just want to jump to the demolition. So Noah, would you mind maybe taking us through this real quick on what the plan is in terms of demolishing these buildings and the other infrastructure out there?
Sure, certainly. So Noah Schneider with CSM Group, and I am working with hiring the right folks to do the different portions of the project. Currently, we are working on executing a contract with a company by the name of Melching, and they provide environmental demolition and abatement services. And the owner and us, through a procurement process, have selected to do a extensive deconstruction process of the existing buildings and site civil infrastructure at the site. Really taking everything that Tim shows here in a hash out, removing that from the property. There are two phases of that. We will not be taking out the buildings and parking lots in the upper left area in the initial phases of the project. We're going to use those for construction purposes, staging, etc. But all the buildings and infrastructure to the right of the page will all be coming out in the initial phase. The intent is to just try to take out everything that is there, returning the site to pre-construction condition, and preparing us for our next steps on the project.
Yep. Thanks, Noah. So really the goal here, like Noah said, is to remove these buildings, walks, parking lots, curbs, some utilities, but the goal here really is to be surgical in what we're removing. So we do realize that this is a beautiful piece of property. That's one of the great things about what we're proposing is how well this is going to fit in, and the features that are out here in terms of the trees and the slopes and the wetlands and all those great things are key attributes that we really want to preserve. So I think we're very much in line with with what your board is charged with protecting. So again, we're planning on removing these as surgically as possible. And then also, we're very concerned with sustainability in this development. So looking for opportunities to reuse materials where we can. I know Noah's been working on that, and we have a sustainability consultant. So we're trying to make progress with that kind of thing where we can as well. We're not asking for any variances from the NFP board or the ZBA for this site demolition work. We have gone through, I'll just roll down to the next sheet here, and done the site an inventory of all the natural features per the ordinance. And then also we have the following sheets detail trees that we've inventoried and then identified certain individual trees to be removed, and then other trees to be protected. Right now, we're planning on removing 33 trees, 4 of which would be considered protected per your ordinance. So our plan, as I think we've talked about previously, is we'll quantify those, and then we will make up for those trees those protected trees that are being removed in our future plan that you'll see here coming, in the next few months. So I think that's it in a nutshell. We're certainly open to any questions and other information you may need from us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Schneider and Mr. Stewart. I thought the inventory was great. I really appreciated the tree sheets and the coding that you used, or the symbology that you used. I felt like that was very easy to find which protected trees would be removed, which is not always the case when we get some of these plans. So what I wanted to do with the board here quickly is, again, like I mentioned, on page 8 of your packet, staff went ahead and filled out an evaluation form, just kind of double checking all of those natural features. I think the inventory was very helpful, again, in the site plan, and kind of giving any considerations for those. So if you don't mind, I'll walk us through that, and then I'm going to open it up for questions that you might have from the developer team or staff.
Sounds good.
So give me just a moment here. All right, my screen should be popping up here. So the plan, again, we're looking at the demolition phase. If we have comments or things that you'd like the developers to keep in mind as they kind of transition between this first phase and the construction phase, we can definitely talk about those at the end as well. But this form here is just anticipating the demolition as it was described in the plan. So if I got this right, it looks like the conditions on this site, it's not adjacent to a public preserve or a recreation area open to the public. Yes, it does comply with the restrictions on our overhead or wellhead protection overlay. And the site, certainly with demolition, it's getting less coverage. So it's complying with site coverage standards in the ordinance. Because of our change in our ordinance, the project is not required to do a public notice. And so I indicated that here on the form. Temporary construction fencing would be required around any trees that are considered protected but are not being removed at this time. So that's something for the development team to keep in mind. And it's always helpful if you have those trees on the site plan, if you can mark those that need to have some fencing to make sure those aren't disturbed or accidentally removed, something like that during construction. So if you get those marked on the plan, that would be great. I think the sheets that you have in there might kind of cover that, what's protected, but just noting on the plan that they need fencing. No to the variance, as Mr. Stewart mentioned, and then stormwater requirements, or has the stormwater been approved? That's no at this time. This project is going to city site plan review or pre-application site plan review tomorrow. So staff will look at that. Our stormwater engineers will look at that and handle that tomorrow. So that has not happened yet. So if we look through kind of feature by feature, we do have wetlands on the site, so there'll be that 25-foot setback that will apply. The note I have here is that the setbacks seem to be met in the demolition phase. And so when we get to the construction phase, we can look at those setbacks again for new construction, new building, and the disturbed area. Similar with water resources, there will be that 25-foot setback that applies to White's Lake. But again, that seems like it's been satisfied in this phase of the project. The protected tree sheets were included in the site plan. They were done very well. I too had noticed that there were 4 protected trees that are proposed to be removed because they are so close to buildings or impervious surfaces, and that it looked like they were well documented. We can go back to that plan once it's approved and reference that for replacement that'll happen in the next phase. Protected woodlands also, it does appear from your inventory that there are protected woodlands on the property, but again, no impact. Looks like it'll be taking place with this demolition phase. And then I had the same for protected slopes that you're going to have those. You've had them marked off on your inventory, and you'll be addressing those and showing setbacks when you go to do the construction phase. And then I know you've mentioned even early on last month when you introduced the project that may be an area where you're going to have to seek some variances when it comes construction time. Ahead of construction time. And then the last one I thought we should talk about is the natural heritage areas. And the project did have an MNFI rare species search performed. No doubt, because of the characteristics of this site, there were a number of species on the list. I did share that letter with Director Colwick so that she could kind of take a look at that. We've encountered this before where some of those species sightings are quite old, some of them several decades, some of them even further back. And so what we'd like to be able to provide the development team with is an idea of which species are probably relevant for an on-site survey, as that will have to happen at some point. And so which do they really focus on? Which are species that they really don't have to worry about in that that survey? And I think at this point, it looks like with the area that's proposed to be disturbed during the demolition phase, that those areas don't seem like they would be ideal habitat for a lot of these species. We're certainly going to want to see all of the proper erosion control measures taken, right? And that's part of the demolition phase and part of the city's permitting process. So as long as that kind of work is done well, it should help protect some of those more sensitive habitats, like all of the shoreline and some of the wetland habitats and things of that nature. That's all I have for the list in terms of the different natural features. And so I would open it up to the board. Happy to take any questions. And if you have any questions for the development team, they're available, or you can provide any comments that you have at this time.
I'll jump in with a few comments and questions. So I like the tree inventory, especially. That was really detailed, all the different symbols. It's really easy to see what the inventory is, what the sizes are, which ones are protected, which ones aren't. So that's great. One thing that I was remembering from the initial presentation that we had at our last meeting was that I thought that some of the buildings were going to be used in the future developments. I think the majority of them were going to be demolished, but I guess I was under the impression that some of them were going to be reused. Is that not the case anymore? The plan's just kind of evolving. I mean, I think that the using the same footprint was also part of the plan, but I was thinking that some of the buildings were going to be retained, but that doesn't look like that's the case here.
Right. Lee, would you maybe want to tackle this one from the design side?
Sure, absolutely. So there is one building that we have been considering using. It is increasingly becoming less and less likely. So what we are intending, part of that is what Tim is doing with the deconstruction process. We want to make sure that if we can't use it, we certainly are going to use that building and possibly two of them during the construction phase as a temporary maintenance building and that kind of thing while we do work on another piece of the property. But I think that right now we don't know for sure, but it's unlikely that we're going to use it. So we're probably going to deconstruct it and donate material and have whatever we can reuse on site and that type of thing.
Okay, so more retained for the construction process itself, but not, okay, that makes sense.
That's
I like
right.
the reusing the materials and all that, that's great. And so Jamie, for the tree protection, there's 33 that need to be removed, but only 4 are of the correct size that they would be protected. That's correct, right? That's kind of the deciding trait.
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. And so those will be replaced in the construction process or the revegetation. Okay. And yeah, maybe Ashley has some thoughts on some of the rare species reviews, and I think this would probably come up during the construction process as well. But looking at some of the records and the habitats that those species need and the age of some of the records, I think one of the most likely things to occur on the site would be eastern box turtles. And they have a life cycle that interacts with different cover types and different habitat types. And so I could see particularly in that southeast corner of the property where there's the wetlands and the old growth woods along the lake, and then the second growth woods and the kind of open areas. I could see them moving between wetland areas and upland areas, depending on if they're nesting or thermoregulating, trying to regulate their temperature and that sort of thing. And I do know that's where the main entrance was proposed. So I know that this will come up in the construction rather than the demolition process, but the road, the impact of the traffic moving along that road might be a consideration as far as box turtle mortality getting squished. So signage could help with that and that sort of thing. But I think that'll come up later. But yeah, those are my main comments.
Mitch, I will chime in because I spent a bit of time looking over the existing occurrences, and I presented Jamie with kind of the 3 areas that I was concerned with as far as rare species. So the lakeshore, we have the horsetail spike rush, the Eleochris equizoides, and that is actually living, that occurrence is recent. So, and that is on that entire west side of White's Lake. And it is an occurrence of a listed plant that is extant. And the good thing for everyone is that protecting that plant and that habitat is also protecting the slope and, you know, all of those other erosion controls. So maybe a little bit of extra attention to what should have already, you know, been considered in the construction phases. And then I included the slope and grasslands throughout as potential turtle habitat. The element that is actually like on site-ish is spotted turtle, which sticks primarily like more towards the wetlands. And we didn't get a hit on box turtle that I know of, but that is the one turtle species that, like Mitch said, is most likely to persist in this sort of habitat. And then the prairie along Oakland, which has likely, from me not having been there at all, walking through that prairie, I'm guessing at least 3 listed prairie plant species in Michigan, likely lead plant and compass plant, and I can't remember the others. I don't have my paper in front of me, but so that's kind of just as you guys think about, you know, as the plans get finalized for the development, those are the 3 kind of zones that I will be paying the most attention to. And given that the demolition is on the existing footprint, pretty comfortable with that. My only really point of concern is that it's just really hard for me. I'm not used to looking at renderings like this. So that, and the only question I had for today was really, is the footprint of the existing parking lots and buildings going to be expanded much during this demolition phase? To me, it looks kind of like a no. And that's where Jamie and I discussed that we were okay with these, having a vote today for the demolition phase, given that that's kind of my assumption. So I just kind of wanted to hear from you guys that the footprint isn't really going to be expanded into the existing natural areas.
Yeah, that's correct from a demolition standpoint. We'll be utilizing the existing hardscapes as our driving paths, and using that as our truck paths in and out, equipment, things like that. And we'll just be as we take down a structure or take out one of those paths, that'll be the end of our disturbance in that area.
Great, thank you. And then I'm just curious about, just some follow-up, if we could get either photos or something that just kind of shows the way the protected slope, the fencing is there during this phase, because to me, the integrity of that fence and how well that slope is protected will impact, how I vote and consider the rest of the second phase of your construction. So I'm just curious, I think that would be nice to see, given that the one definitive extant listed species is on that slope at the bottom there. And to me, that is the most important natural feature on this site. We have the prairie, but there's some questions about how we protect planted rare species versus, naturally occurring sites. So those three areas I listed, turtles, it's really hard to say. You could do 15 surveys and say there's no turtles there, and I still wouldn't entirely believe there's no turtles there, because that's the nature of looking for a turtle. And but that slope and the white slate to me is the natural feature that I want to make sure is in the best shape throughout this process. So but yeah, that's all I had.
No, I don't think that'd be any issue with it. You'd probably be documenting the work out there. Would that be difficult to obtain some pictures and for our next submittal? For the
not at all. We've already done some aerial drone photography of the site, and we'll continue that throughout the demolition. So we'll get to see a bit of a time lapse, and we'll put some fencing across that area to make sure that we don't have the random driver park in that area or anything like that. So.
Thanks, Noah. Bobby, I've seen your hand up.
Yeah, when you biologist folks talk about flora and fauna, it's like, but as a geologist, I'm reminding us that about a year or so ago, this board discussed an incident where soil erosion and sedimentation control measures were perhaps inadequate. And we were talking about a deposition of sediments into a lake in surface water body in Kalamazoo because those measures were inadequate. So my only comment would be, given the slopes towards White's Lake and protected wetland areas, that those soil erosion and sedimentation control measures be adequate, and that there be an actual construction site stormwater operator that is effective because I imagine that during the time between demolition to new construction, there will be unvegetated areas that are subject to erosion. So that's just a comment.
I had basically the same comment, and I was just looking at the aerial photo, and there is quite a bit of natural area. It looks like between the lake and the construction area. So just that helps. But yeah, making sure that all of that construction fencing and erosion control is in good shape throughout the project. I think the pattern is that we've been getting bigger storms during the non-growing season, which makes erosion a bigger problem for all of us. So just, really staying on top of that and making sure silt fences aren't going under underwater and things like that.
Did I see a hand raised from PMAC over there?
Yeah, very nice, your whole layout here, the tree inventory, everything is great. I was really amazed by all of the data that you put down too. It's very nice. Thank you. That's good information to help us look at. Is it possible to visit the site a couple of times during construction and during demolition?
Yeah, certainly. From our perspective, we'd welcome visitors. We'll have a construction gate set up, and we need to check people in and have the appropriate PPE, but certainly.
Okay. You watch over the site pretty well now. I was out there the other day. I got stopped by 2 people. So I'm going, whoa, I'm going to end up in jail here. I don't know, but no, they were very nice. They were good and stuff, but yeah, they want to know what the hell I was doing out there. So
Doing their job. I heard you got to ride around in a golf cart too, Paul.
yeah, I'm afraid so. He really took pity on me. He probably felt I was really infirmed. So yeah, that was great. Thanks. Yeah, good cooperation. I can see why you're taking down. I mean, I tried to see all of the trees that you're going to be taking out, and I have no concern about any of them. So it's okay. That's it. Before I start rambling, I'll quit.
And this is Jamie. I'll just jump in and say that to the board, if you have specific things that you're interested in seeing or photographs, we have, our inspection staff too, who make their visits as needed. So we can rely on them too. Just let me know what you need.
I said a couple more. If you already said it, I apologize. If obviously we approve tonight and everything can move forward, what would be your demolition timeline? Would it be kind of pending soon then, or?
Yeah, we're lined up and ready to proceed as your authorization and we get our demolition permit in hand. We do have our abatement notification going into the state to start the removal of the hazardous materials. And so we're moving forward on a parallel path to get the demolition permit and that initial deconstruction piece and abatement and removal that we want to start with.
That's great. Yeah, I think for the turtles, the aquatic ones will be in the wetlands and in the water in the wintertime in the colder months, and the terrestrial turtles like the box turtles will be in the wooded areas. So I think it's actually really ideal that you're kind of poised to start this time of year. I just have one more question. I'm curious about your process of deciding which trees you can keep. There are some that look like they're really close to the deconstructed footprint that I was happily surprised that you're going to be able to keep. And then others that were equally as close that were going to be removed. So obviously the critical root zone of the tree, if it's going underneath infrastructure, I could understand how removing that infrastructure necessarily would have to result in a tree removal. But I guess, could you maybe describe that process of how you think about how close they are to foundations or infrastructure, or how that decision-making process goes?
Yeah, I put together that plan with Tim's support in documenting it, but we tried to just identify the most critical trees with respect to adjacencies to buildings and paths that would be utilized for equipment in ingress and egress. And said, if we want to do the least disturbance to any of the natural features, these are the core things that we need to remove to get that done. There certainly may be a point where we're opening something up and finding an extensive root system that's, extending out toward the building that's not present from the surface. And we'll document those types of things and bring them up at the next round of approval for the new construction. Knowing that trees are, going to be a point of conversation at that conversation as well. So yeah, we just tried to go in with the scalpel and really isolate the buildings and the core things that we had to remove to get to those buildings.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to Mr. Leto's comment, do you have any timeline for when you might be coming back to this board for phase 2? And I'm thinking about that in regards to that MNFI on-site survey, when you do plan to do that type of survey. I see there's some botanical species that the board is asking about. And I just want to avoid, if we can, having to wait on a survey because you want to start phase 2. So I'm just thinking about how we do timing, and if you want to get that survey done now yet in the fall, if we can, hopefully before snow is upon us.
Yeah, I can answer that. Actually, we have the survey lined up, and it should be taking place in the next few weeks. We have ASTI Environmental is our partner in that. I don't have an exact date, but we definitely want to get it done this fall.
I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Cool, thanks. See, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I guess, and I know today we're just talking about the demolition phase, but can you talk a little bit more about kind of like what the end goal is with this development? Kind of like what do you have to like have as the final result after all this is said and done?
Yeah, I can give you, or maybe between me and Lee, we can give you a quick overview of what's proposed. But so this is anticipated to be the new home of the Kalamazoo Country Club, the executive course, the golf clubhouse, a golf activity center, a parking ramp. I guess let me hand it to Lee. She can describe the program obviously
Sure.
much better than I can.
Sure. Yeah. Our intention is to, as Tim said, it'll be a new clubhouse and family activity center with a golf performance center, an aquatic center, rackets. And really, one of the features of this project is we, as Tim mentioned earlier, we do have a sustainability consultant, and we are excited to really kind of make this a highly sustainable project. So it really aligns with what we're talking about here. Even in our preliminary, as we're looking at where we place the building, our goal is to use the spaces that are already disturbed for where existing is where possible, and also be just very conscientious of everything. And we're going to celebrate even where the wetlands are. We're even thinking about like a little nature trail or something like that. So it's very much, we really want this to be something that we're thinking of this in terms of 100 years. So
Thanks, Lee. So I just want to make sure we are getting all of the comments and questions from the board before proceed to vote. Any other thoughts while we have everyone here? Okay. So I think if we're done with this discussion, we can entertain a motion to approve the natural features site plan for the project located at 3921 Oakland Drive, with the assumption that we are only approving the demolition phase of that site plan. Yeah. Paul. You're still muted, buddy. Boom, bingo.
Don't move.
So, okay, motion moved by Director McNallis, support by Bobby Glasser.
I second.
Okay, great. And now we'll need a roll call vote for this, Jamie.
Of course, we will start with Chair Colwick,
I vote yes.
Ms. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Glasser,
I approve of the demolition plan as presented.
Mr. Leto,
Yes.
Mr. McNellis,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
and Mr. Sylvester.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. I'll let the development team know it's my intention to sit in on the pre-site plan meeting with staff tomorrow. So I will see you there. And I will also pass along the results of this meeting to Bobby Durkee so he can make sure it's in his file that you have approval from this board at this time. Thank you.
Good deal. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you all of you for your time and consideration here.
Thank you all. Take care.
Okay, so we have another item on new business, the Education and Stewardship Initiative, tree protection, no action, but we were going to hear from Jamie or Nolan on that.
Yeah, Mr. Bergstrom is here with us to talk about an initiative that he's been doing a little bit of research into, and it seemed like it aligned really well with, or might be of potential interest to this board from some conversations we had in the NFP phase 2 process in one of our committees in particular, where we were talking about whether a tree standard could apply to the whole city, or whether a tree standard is the way that we can regulate all trees throughout the city. And the group had talked about how perhaps education and stewardship and public awareness might be another tool, a non-regulatory type tool that can help bring awareness to certain trees in the city and thereby, help protect them in that way if they're important to the community. So Nolan, I'll let you share your screen and talk a bit about this idea that's come up in another city.
Yeah, so everyone can hear me, correct? Cool. My internet connection was a little unstable during that presentation, so I was a little worried. But my name is Nolan Bergstrom. I'm in Portage, Michigan, just to clarify. I'll share my screen now. So I wanted to share this with everyone. And I can put the link for this in the chat. But this kind of something I stumbled across that Baltimore had done or is doing during research for the sustainability plan. And basically they have it's sort of an initiative that uses public support. So this is called their Champion, Notable, and Favorite Trees program. So they kind of have like a city competition almost to have trees identified. So for example, they have this Siberian elm. I guess they have a state championship for trees too. This was a state and city championship. So they're basically looking at trees in the public realm. I think they have a separate program for the private property, but so you can see this person down here for scale, but it's a pretty big tree. So the idea of it would be engaging with people of all ages in Kalamazoo to try and jumpstart a program similar to this, where we can start to get to a sense of where maybe in the public realm we have trees that are of considerable size, or there's the score is the circumference of the tree in inches plus its height in feet, and then plus a quarter of the average crown spread gets a point score. But the fun thing is people can learn, they'll get this would be providing a location of the tree, some information like its common name and scientific name. So getting some educational aspects involved, whether or not it's native or not. They also have a favorite tree program, which I thought was really cool. And Jamie also thought was really interesting, where there's some stories and testimonials attached to some of these trees that people talk about. So a little different than scoring a tree numerically, but giving some of these trees worth beyond ecological and more in the social realm. So understanding that these serve a purpose sometimes beyond the ecological. So if anybody wants to chime in, and if they think this is a good idea or something that maybe would be worth it in the long run, to sort of preface it a little bit more, this sort of page they have set up is through Esri. And I think I'd have to consult with Ben Clark, the GIS administrator for the city, but I think we can create story maps similar to this. Not to cheat and totally take all inspiration from Baltimore, but I like how it's kind of laid out, and it also gives you a sense of like where things are at. So yeah, I'll open the floor. Any thoughts, initial?
Nolan, I think this is a great idea, and I think it might be easier than you think because the Michigan Botanical Club has a
Yeah.
database.
I forgot to mention that I did stumble across that. I think the current person running the Big Tree Register is either living in the Kalamazoo area or in the county at least.
Because I'm pretty sure we have a champion dwarf hackberry that's in our NFP overlay. So I think that it would be great to have a tool, a georeference online tool for people to be able to find them, or maybe eventually the city puts plaques on them or something.
Yeah, and also thought it would be an interesting way to see if a lot of these trees are falling in maybe serendipitously into the NFP overlay. And since, Woodlands is kind of a tricky thing to regulate, as Jamie was saying, this seems to be a way to, I don't want to say defend woodlands and trees, but I think I like the favorite trees, and also I like that there's maybe a little bit of a competition involved, because it kind of drives people to discover what, some of the money. You may pass a tree every day that you don't think twice about, but then someone has a story attached to it, or it gets to score, and all of a sudden it becomes a meaningful living object in the city. So yeah, it's good to know that there's some interest here. And yeah, I forgot to mention, I did discover the Michigan Botanical Club website.
I have a couple of comments. My first one is, Nolan, you have more tabs on your browser than anyone I've ever seen, but that's an aside. Do you know if these trees get any type of protection due to their designation in any one of these categories? Or is the idea just that the community will sort of recognize them, and through that recognition, there would be public commentary or outcry or whatever you want to say if something were to happen to them, or maintaining the health of them? Or
I'm not 100% sure. I know it says right here, through collective stewardship. So I think the idea is that through recognition, they take on people take a sense of pride in these trees, sort of based on, their impressiveness.
Yeah.
I'd have to look again. I know they have a little tab here for deceased trees. So,
oh wow,
they actually are recognizing trees that are no longer with us.
Wow, that's fascinating.
So that's an interesting thing. Trees that have won the championship. So there's not many. So I'd have to double check, Mitch. I'm not 100%.
Okay, sure. I was just curious because I know part of the reason we kind of kicked the individual tree protection out was because of how difficult and problematic it would have been to enforce. So I was curious if there was any teeth associated with these trees. I think that I've been interacting with Brian LaBelle, the city forester, a little bit, and I know they've completed their tree inventory, and maybe Jamie can comment to that more. I mean, I think they'll be ready to share that data soon. And I think in terms of like the champion trees, so the Botanical Club does a statewide inventory of the native trees, which ones are the biggest. And I think maybe on the county level, I'm not sure, but there would be like a city assessment of what our local champion trees are. Like that would be a new inventory basically. So that's kind of cool. And I think the city tree inventory, I'm thinking did the public areas and the curb lawns, which are kind of in the city jurisdiction and right of way, but maybe there could be a community aspect of it. Whether somebody thinks they might have a champion tree and they could submit a like proposal or location or whatever, and someone could come out and measure it. I don't know, maybe there's like an AmeriCorps group or something like that that could work on tree stewardship or interact with some of the community. But I think that would also, the cultural value is interesting, and like the favorite trees, even if they're not the biggest, if they have a story associated with them. I mean, I don't know how you qualify like what stories are
We have
worthy of
trees in-
getting a designation, but
In the Vine neighborhood that they said, well, they moved the street bumped out right here. That's why the streets don't line up, because there was some big
Yeah.
trees. So those are interesting. I'm going to get one of those DBH tape holsters for my belt. I'm just going to start DBHing all the big trees in town. So thanks for the inspiration, Nolan.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Like the notable tree part of it, I think it's sort of, they have a nomination form that I think is then reviewed. And a one part of it that I did think that was a little bit interesting. I thought they had required the Latin name, but I guess not. They just, if it's not known, then you can just give your best guess. So I actually liked, that was my concern, is like, no one's going to know what the Latin name is unless they're, which you might miss some trees then.
Mhm.
They don't fly away, though. I suppose you can go visit them later.
Right.
Sorry, Bobby.
No, that's fine. Nolan, thank you. I like the idea of the, competition grand champion trees throughout a community. I like the other idea, the secondary idea of the trees with a story. I could see schools and or neighborhood associations in Kalamazoo adopting, if you will, specific trees with a story, whereby when I was a kid, I used to, on my way to school, I would hang out underneath this particular tree, and it has meaning to me. May not be the biggest, baddest tree in the neighborhood, but it's one that's of importance to me. And every tree that's important to somebody is more likely to be protected because of them. So, yeah.
very true. I think on Bobby's comment, it also just promotes the idea that nature, even if you live in the city, you do have nature around you. It's not that we're here and nature is somewhere that you have to go. And I think it just promotes that idea of a quality of life, and that we do, have nature here. And the more of those big bur oaks and white oaks that get protected, that have concrete all around them, somehow they're still surviving. I guess that's one of my other thoughts, is that some of these really old bur oaks in particular, but they do sidewalk cutouts, and eventually like you run out of sidewalks to cut. And some of them, like there's one on West Nidge or West Main that stretches over the entire street basically. And it's an amazing tree. It's in a very challenging place. So I don't know how it made it, but like seeing more protection around the sort of impervious environment around the trees would be cool. And maybe, public recognition of their value is a good kind of incentivizing way to go.
Yeah, and these would be just public trees to start. We'd have to figure out something. I know Baltimore does do something different with private trees. I don't know 100% how it works, but you can't just, unless the property owner is very forgiving or open, you can't just have groups of people trying to get on the property to see a certain type of tree. So it'd be the public realm first. But
Paul, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just about what you just said, Nolan. I think it should be voluntary. I mean, that's, if you want to put your tree out there as a protected thing, I wouldn't even assume to just do it, unless anyway, the Southwest Michigan chapter of the Giant Tree Program for the state already has, you can get on their website, and then they already have a submission scenario right there. You can just click on it and fill in. I'm wondering, rather than make our own, or try to have it in the city, if we use them to do that and kind of publicize them maybe as being the place to go to do your submission. I say that without talking to them, but Dave Wendling is their chapter president, and he's been around for a long time. He's in the Wild Ones and a whole bunch of other stuff. So anyway, he's a bee guy now. I think he's been out to my prairie here counting bees. So anyway, I think, rather than redo the whole thing, if that exists, maybe we can kind of tap into that. I think it's a good place to start, at least for the education part. You want to kind of intrigue people to participate without beating them in the head about it. And of course, the ones that are going to participate is more like preaching to the choir, but I want to try to reach people that, I don't know anything about trees, but I got a really big one here. I gotta, present that or something. So, okay.
Yeah, I agree with that as a first step to contacting Dave Wendling. And and I think, Nolan, you're aware of all the new Esri tools, like story maps and just all those interactive maps. I think there are some great ways to even use the existing data. So
we have by the way, I forgot to mention, we have a state champion in Kleinstock. So
yeah,
Old Cypress.
I did read that. Yeah.
According to the website, there's also a red cedar champion back there, and I'm trying to figure out where there's a red cedar in Kleinstock.
Yeah,
especially a state champion one.
Yeah,
maybe it's misidentified.
Maybe.
Nolan, I'm sure if you wanted to, Mitch or Paul or I or anyone would be willing to flesh out some of this or get you some contact info from people from the botanical clubs or Wild Ones. Might be a way to get some people that, like Paul said, aren't already on board interested. So
yeah, the guy who's like the official goes out and measures them to see if they fit in the database. He's a volunteer, but he basically did a talk here locally like 2 or 3 years ago and described how he measures them. So he is a volunteer. So getting him to do all the city trees is probably unlikely, but he might come here and do like a training, and you could have somebody from each neighborhood or a group from each neighborhood kind of learn it. And then you could have, like, on neighborhood association level, have people go out in their respective neighborhoods and kind of come back and see like what's significant or what they find or whatever, just to sort of like trickle that knowledge down.
Yeah, I'd rather build on the shoulders of giants first. And then I just thought it was interesting that it seemed like in Maryland they have the state championship, but then they also have cities, competing with each other. So if Kalamazoo could be one of the first cities to jumpstart maybe a, like Michigan-wide city, I mean, I would be interested to see like UP cities versus Lower Peninsula cities competing in a tree competition to see, you got a city that's like a couple blocks, but they have one huge tree in the UP versus Kalamazoo with all these neighborhoods and different tree types. But yeah, it was just a nugget of an idea. I got inspired by what had been done elsewhere, and I wanted to bounce it off you guys because I think it could be an interesting way to start phase 3 are thinking about phase 3, especially like over the winter time, it could be developed and then deployed in like spring/summer or fall even. So
I will say, I think that like this covers the public trees, like in the city right of way. Mostly it seems like, and our challenge with the NFP is that it's a zoning requirement that goes over a lot of private property. So
yeah,
I think it could be a complementary tool, but maybe there's other ways that like people could get assistance to assess the health of the trees in their own yard if they participate in a program or something, and they could get recommendations to kind of go alongside the sort of celebrated like public trees, since that's really what the NFP was hitting the most and that we got the most kind of negative feedback on was the private stuff.
It's a good idea.
Great. Well, Nolan, I look forward to hearing more about this as you flesh it out. And yeah, any other comments for Nolan? Our city employee, not an AmeriCorps, or I mean, not an intern. Okay. Is that it? Anybody else? Anything else, Nolan?
Nope, that was it.
Cool. And with that, old business, we have none. Announcements from the board, anything else anyone wants to bring up before I move on to the next thing and quickly adjourn? Great. Jamie, do you have anything, any comments? Do we expect to have a meeting again, the next scheduled meeting for November?
I'll let everyone know. I typically, about 1 week out, we can cancel if we don't have any applications. I don't have any in the pipeline that I'm aware of. I will just give a brief update. We've had, in the last few weeks, we've had 4 different residential properties come forward who are looking to do some level of construction. I think to date, they're mostly accessory buildings, sheds, things like that. But these are properties that are in the NFP overlay district. So I've been working with staff. We've been getting a bit more practice on how to apply these standards to residential properties, to projects of this size, and then how that's sort of worked into our permitting and approval process. So we're seeing some of that influx of applications because of the amount of residential that was added to the overlay district. I don't have any site plan review type projects that I'm familiar with right now. But again, if we get any of those in the next couple of weeks, I'll keep you posted on the November meeting. It sounds like this board, if we don't have any business, are we looking to cancel our November meeting? Right before the holiday. So I'll let you guys know.
Sounds good. Just with the Zoom, I just want to give one extra 5 seconds to anyone that has another comment. Paul, I'm glad you got a tour of the site. I thought about you the other day when I drove by and saw those locked gates on the site. Lakeside development.
Yeah, you talked about the prairie that's along Oakland Drive. That was planted like about, I want to say 35, 40 years ago. It was planted by the wild ones into a prairie. So I did, just glancing through it, looks to me like there's some Indian grass in there, might be some little blue stem. I didn't see any big blue stem or, that, but yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff in there. It's, really non-consequential, really. What I mean is it's great. It's nothing protected, nothing, sacred, but I'm glad that they're looking at it and saying, no, we don't want to do anything with that. So that's great.
Well, there's some natural heritage methodology issues that come up just in that there are listed species, I think, in there, but they were planted. So not necessarily legally protect. I don't know. I think it's an argument to be had over drinks. So Mitch, you just unmuted. Do you have something to add before we go?
I was just gonna make, I don't know how consequential it is to our work, but a small announcement that a group of neighborhood residents and I and the Vine have kind of gotten together, and inspired by a couple of people who started planting some trees and curb lawns on their own. A lot of these old silver maples and older trees were getting taken down as hazard trees, but there weren't any being replaced. The stumps weren't being ground, and so we're kind of like losing canopy and not gaining anything as a subsequent step to that. So they were kind of motivated to try to get together and figure out ways to replace our urban canopy in the Vine neighborhood. And so we actually got a small grant from Building Blocks for $1,000. And so as of this fall, we've planted 20 trees. And so we're finding individual homeowners who are up for having a native tree planted in their curb lawn space where there are gaps. And Jamie, I appreciate you facilitating a connection with Brian LaBelle, the city forester, and we're trying to figure out how to interact and best use one another's resources. But they've been, verbally willing to help water, and if given enough notice, like provide mulch and things like that. They have some tree planting they're doing this fall too. And they finished their city tree inventory. And I know the Foundation for Excellence is funding some other tree projects. So we hope to plant another 20 to 30 in the spring to round out the other half of our grant. But yeah, this is definitely a feel good situation to be had in terms of like incentivizing and moving forward on replacing trees that get taken down.
Thanks for that feel good update, Mitch. Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah, I want to shout out to Jamie. Thank you for business housekeeping. I am now receiving emails at my new business email address. So thanks for taking care of that.
Same. Thank you. Okay. With that, I think we will adjourn. And if I don't see you guys in a couple weeks, enjoy your fall. And that's it for today. Do I just say adjourn, Jamie?
You're good, Chair Colwick. Thank you so much. You did a lovely job for this meeting.
Back the hammer.
See you all later.
I need a gavel.
Bye.
Hey, my puppy.
Thank you.
Bye.